Well met, and welcome to Screen King, Stephen King from Page to Screen. This is a new show. It's our very first episode of Screen King. Oh my gosh, I can't even say it. Screen King. And joining me today and for every episode of this show, the other host, Stacy Morris. Hello, Stacy.
Hello, Matt. I'm so excited that we're doing this.
Me too. This was kind of a passion project for us because I'll just go into, we're going to kind of, because it's our first episode, we're going to kind of go into our kind of history with Stephen King, get everyone acquainted with who we are in this sphere. So I grew up with my mom reading a lot of Stephen King. She was really into Stephen King. And I read a couple, and we'll go over a couple of those, but I wasn't like a big Stephen King reader growing up. And I remember when it was 2003, I think, when Wolves of Kala came out, she was blown away because that's like the first one that has a major character that crosses over.
Yes.
And, so when she sees spoiler alert, Callahan show up in that book, she was blown away, and she was telling me all about it. And so I was like, oh, that's really cool. That I should read that sometime. So a couple years ago, I was like, all right, it's my mission now. My mom passed away several years ago, and I was just like, all right, I'm going to kind of in her honor read the Dark Tower series. But I'm a completionist, so like I was like, well, if I'm going to read Dark Tower, I have to read everything that connects to the Dark Tower. And so I went and found
by any means.
So I went and found a list, or I found several lists, and no one quite agree on what exactly constitutes it. And I've discovered since finishing this project that there are a lot of things that could constitute and may not, and that kind of thing, including this book we talked about today. We're gonna be talking about today, because like it kind of varies. Like, does it reference like that it's in the same world as another one? Does it actually reference the territories and stuff like that? All that stuff, like that kind of. Anyway, so
direct reference and like adjacent reference.
Right, exactly. So like I went through all of that and just had a blast, and it was a great time. But like the whole time, I'm like, Stacy and I are talking about, like, she will tell you in a moment, like about her experience. But so I was talking to Stacy this whole time, and once I was done, I was now a Stephen King fan, and so we were talking about how, you know, there's shows about the books, and there's shows about the movies, and there's horror shows, and there's literary shows and stuff like that, but it's not common to have one where you talk about both. And that was Stacy had brought that up, and I was like, that's genius. And like within minutes, I was like, I messaged her. I was just like, hey, once the channel comes back online, because, you know, I took a little hiatus, but once we're back with the channel, we've got to do this show. And so that is where we how this whole thing started. But I'll send it over to Stacy. Oh, just real quick before I send it over to Stacy, I will say that the made-for-TV miniseries, Stephen King miniseries that we would get every once in a while were like a religious thing in my house. Like, once those were happening, the whole family in the front room, like watching like every night that it was on. It was so I grew up with a lot, you know, around a lot of Stephen King stuff, but I only recently became like an actual like Stephen King fan recently. But I'll pass it over to you, Stacy. Tell me about your Stephen King history.
Well, I discovered Stephen King, I guess it was probably the summer between 5th and 6th grade. I was stuck at my grandparents' house for like a week, and it is not the most exciting place to be stuck. It's a cranberry bogs in the middle of nowhere. So I read a lot. I read a lot. And I was looking for something to read. I probably finished whatever I brought with me, and I found it. Um, I think it was my grandfather's book. He didn't read a lot of Stephen King. He just had a lot of random stuff. Like I think he might have been in a book of the month club or something. It was a kind of a random find, but I read it in that week that I was there between fifth and sixth grade. It's very appropriate. And I really liked it. And then I don't remember like a direct transition, but I do know that when I was young, I used to get allergy shots every month. I used to have an appointment. I'd go do my allergy, asthma test, shots, whatever. And then we'd have to go get a prescription filled, whatever they prescribed from the appointment. And that was back in the day when like you would go to the pharmacy and hand them the script and wait 20 to 30 minutes to get your stuff. And it was also back in the day when pharmacies had books.
Mm-hmm.
So for getting a shot every month, one of the rewards for, being good was I could pick out a book. And
nice.
I got a lot of Stephen King paperbacks that way, which I wish I still had, but they, this was the early 90s. So they have deteriorated along the way. But yeah, and then I loved him and I just kept reading. Sometimes I went on some hiatuses and I, once I started listening to audiobooks, like my audio library is mainly Stephen King because I don't have all those paperbacks anymore. And some stuff like I even got from the library and everything. So, I don't have all the physical books anymore, unfortunately. But so that's basically my foundation. I discovered The Dark Tower kind of late for someone who was already an avid reader of his. But once I did, it rekindled my love of King and his works. And now fitting the pieces together of everything was so, so much a fun way to like reread and re-listen and go through stuff again and like piece it all together because it's all really part of it.
Right.
All different levels of the tower.
Right. Well, and at the end of one of the books, like there's like a Stephen King afterword or something, and it's like, and where he's just like, this is probably where all of my characters go. like, and this was like before. This was before Wolves of Kala, but it was like he had referenced something or in that book, and he was just like, yeah, this is probably where all my characters go. So technically, they're all connected to the Dark Tower, but there's, like you said, there are direct references, and then there are things that are connected and stuff like that. You remind me, the first Stephen King book I ever read was also It, which I think is probably a gateway for a lot of kids who grew up in the 80s and 90s, because number one, there were fewer restrictions on on kids back then, and number two, it's the best part of that book is about kids,
right?
And grew up with kids on bikes adventures, like type movies and stories and stuff like that. So it really I think it really resonates with our generation specifically, just because it really ties into all that, which is what why things like Stranger Things and stuff like that are so popular, is just it taps into that thing that was really popular with our generation,
right?
And then we become the consumers, and
we have nostalgia.
Yeah. You also reminded me like that I had started Dark Tower back when my mom was telling me about, like back in 2003 or whatever. I went over to her bookcase and grabbed Gunslinger, and that book is I love it now, but at the time I'm just reading it, I was like, this is so dry. I don't understand what's happening. It's so like there's nothing's going on like for a while. So I didn't finish that. I didn't finish that book.
This is a very common experience from what I hear.
Yeah. And so yeah. And then when I started it this time around, I was like, oh, I remember why I stopped reading this, but I've read it a couple times since I read it. So since then, so it's so now I have an appreciation for it, but just back then it just did not grab me the way it should have. It also, you reminded me like you say your grandpa had just like books, and he wasn't a Stephen King guy, but that I find that that's a common thing in readers' households that like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, I have that book. No, I have not read it. Like all kinds of
I had
books.
no idea if you ever read it, to be honest with you.
uh, but yeah, but we are here to discuss the first book that we the not Stephen King's first book, but the first book for our first episode, which is going to be Misery. Now, I had seen this movie a number of times before I read it, obviously, because this was actually my first. This is my first time reading it all the way through. I did start it like right after I finished my Dark Tower experience, and I think I was just like so Stephen King logged that I was just like, no, I can't.
Mhm.
It just was not working. Like I was not enjoying it. It was not grabbing me the way it should, and so I was kind of dreading it this time. I was like, oh, I have to go back and read this book, and I have to give my honest opinion on it. But luckily, this time it grabbed me pretty early, and I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, this is. I'm feeling a lot better about this, and it's a little bit harder, I think, when it's harder and easier when you know a movie that a book is based on pretty well. Uh, it can sometimes be easier if you're not maybe enjoying the book experience quite as much, but it can also be harder because like you know what you're waiting for, but it's not
Mhm.
getting to the things like so that can be hard. So I think that was probably my problem the first time, but this time it really it really grabbed me. And we'll get into specifics here in a moment. But when did you first read Misery? Do you remember?
So, Misery was one of those paperbacks I
Mm,
grabbed at, I don't know what year it's actually released. I think it was in the mid to late 80s. So, I think it had been around a while probably by the time I grabbed it at the bookstore.
yeah.
Um, Although I was pretty young and I am pretty old now. So, I don't know. But I don't remember, to be honest, if I read it before or after the movie, when I saw the movie for the first time. Um, it really could have gone either way. I don't have a lot of memories of thinking about the book or the movie while doing the other, which is kind of
Hmm.
weird. But I just also have forgotten a lot of things over the years. So yeah, it was one of
Age.
those, and I liked it. I didn't. It wasn't my favorite. I didn't love it as far as King books go. I mean, same with the movie. The movie's obviously really good. And Rob Reiner directed, and Kathy Bates got the Oscar, and we'll talk about all of that. But yeah, it was definitely not a waste of time. It is a little bit slower than a lot of his other stuff.
Hmm.
So listening was a little bit harder for me because I take things in better reading and I'm a quick reader. So sometimes audiobooks
Mm.
are easier for me to deal with and sometimes they're harder for me to deal with. And this is the case where I think it's a little bit harder to stay into the audiobook than it was a physical book.
I think that was part of my problem the first time also, is that I I prefer to read an actual book, but
Mhm.
uh I've got kids, I've got a job. It's
Mhm.
very difficult for me to find time. Plus, if I were a reader, like if when I say that, if I were a person whose favorite form of entertainment was reading, that would be one thing, but I'm a film guy, so like
Right.
I also have all this other stuff, and I know that you are
Mhm.
also a film guy also, um, but so sometimes, so a lot of times audiobooks are easy for me, and luckily like Stephen King is a huge advocate for audiobooks. Like dude
Yes.
loves audiobooks. I remember, what was I think it was in his on writing book where he talks about how he used to have his, uh, or maybe it was just a forward on one of the audiobooks. I don't remember, but how he used to have his kids read a book out loud and tape
Mhm.
themselves. And then he would listen to the book like while he was driving and stuff like that. Um, but just for to go back to what you were saying before, the novel Misery came out in 1987 and the movie was 1990. But not that I'm sure that does not help in determining which you did first, but yeah. So I think that with this one, it was the first time I tried to do it. It was audiobook, and both times I did audiobook, but first time I have a problem where, and this is why reading like with my eyes is easier for me than reading with my ears, is that my mind will wander. And if my mind wanders while I am reading with my eyes,
you reread.
I'll just skip back. I'll be like, okay, exactly. I'll scan until I see the last thing I really remember, and then I'll go from there. With an audiobook, it's hard because I go back, but I'm like, I don't remember if I heard this exact combination of words before. Like, and so it's sometimes it's a lot harder to do it that way. But yeah, I similar. I don't know how many versions of the audiobooks there are, but the version that I listened to, and maybe that you listened to as well, was read by, gosh, what's her name? It was, oh God, I can't remember her name, but she plays in Buffy the Vampire Slayer season 4. She plays the professor who's the head of the initiative. So okay. that was.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't really remember what the. I know that the narrator that read the book when I listened to, sounded kind of like Kathy Bates, or was trying to sound kind of like Kathy Bates. Yeah. I do know that. I don't remember her name, but I remember thinking, like, does she naturally kind of sound like Kathy Bates, or is she really trying to?
Yeah, Lindsay Krause is her name, and yes. Yeah, she's she. I thought she did a really great job. I was surprised though, because like the bulk of the book is from the point of view of Paul. Yeah. And to having a woman read it was interesting, but I found that kind of let me look at both Paul and Annie a little more objectively, I think, rather than feeling like I was listening to Paul tell the story. So I felt like that was that worked pretty well for me. But reading it this time, you said it wasn't ever really one of your favorites or anything like that. Did your opinion improve, or?
Well, the thing I love about Stephen King, and you're going to hear this from me probably a lot as we do the show, is that what I think makes him such a great, compelling writer, the reason I can't put his stuff down, is really, despite these crazy things he writes about, all he cares about is characters. That's why some of his books are these huge tomes, is because it's all character exploration. And Annie Wilkes is an interesting character, that's for sure. And, you know, Paul's situation and being a writer, and you have to wonder how much Stephen might have put a little of his own fears and stuff into Paul's character. I enjoyed it. I did. I mean, I don't think it'll ever be one of my favorites. It doesn't mean I don't think it might be one of his better ones. It just doesn't necessarily have like a lot of the features that really hook me in. But for basically a one location, mostly taking place in somebody's head and their thoughts, I think it's great. And what I really liked a lot about it was the actual story he was writing. I got very invested in wanting to know what happened in that story. So the story within the story, I really enjoy.
I actually, I won't say that I didn't care for the story within the story. It was not for me, which made me kind of connect with Paul a little bit more, maybe because it wasn't for him really either. There were things about it that I liked those parts. I liked that they kind of showed you at least a pared down version of what he was writing throughout it. I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, the story within the story wasn't wasn't really my thing, although I can probably tell you that if they made a series out of it, like a TV series, I would probably enjoy it. So it's
I'm like Annie. I need to know what happens with those cliffhangers, and I was just dying to figure out how she was going to come back, how they were going to dig her up, like all those things. Like early on, I'm like,
that's a part of the book that I book and movie that I really agreed with Annie, because she was like, when she was talking about in the serials and cliffhangers, or she
the
called
cheating.
the cheating, uh and I feel the same way. I've always felt the same way. I hate it when a show or I actually own several serials on DVD, especially the Batman ones. I own those, but anytime that they would do a cliffhanger and come back and the setup was not the same as where they left it, always upsets me. Like when I was younger, like it doesn't bother me as much anymore, like so much anymore. Like they're doing their thing, but it does take me out. Like I can't believe I can't believe your universe if it doesn't follow its own rules. So like that's the trouble with it. But yeah, so yeah, I definitely understood where she was coming from. I, however, would not stand up in a theater and yell at the screen about how it was cheating.
Everyone's morons or whatever.
But that really shines a light on who Annie is. But before, you were talking about how he kind of got to get some of his frustrations out with being a writer through Paul Sheldon, which I thought was very interesting. And as I'm reading this, I was like, I wonder if this is, if this is a cipher for Stephen King. And we'll cover this because there is an adaptation of it, but in the universe, the Stephen King universe, Stephen King's twinner is Mike Noonan from Bag of Bones. But it kind of made me wonder, like, how many, like, if there are, there are other worlds than these, like, how many worlds can there be a Stephen King, and is this another version of his twinner? And so as I'm reading this, I'm like listening for like things that might indicate one way or the other. And the only thing that really, like, I felt was well, there's a couple things that made me feel like this could be a Stephen King, a version of Stephen King. Number one, Paul Sheldon is just as bad as writing black characters as Stephen King is. And there's a reason, because Stephen King also wrote Paul Sheldon's black character.
Transferable skill.
But also that his writing process, because I as I said, I had read On Writing because it featured one of the characters in Dark Tower, which was Stephen King. And I was reading On Writing, and he talks about his process, how he doesn't go into it with like knowing what's going to happen, like that. Right. He that kind of thing. Like he starts writing and lets, as Paul Sheldon kind of described it, as that hole that opens up in the paper.
Yeah.
And such like that's how he does it. So.
Him and Anne Rice, who's like my other favorite author. So it's kind of funny. They both kind of say this, but they both kind of describe themselves as conduit for characters to come through when they write, that it's not always up to them, like what happens, and they don't always plan it, and they're just kind of let things come through and tell the story.
My favorite version of that kind of explanation comes from Quentin Tarantino, who says, "My characters don't know they're in a movie." And I love that, because like, and he said that after Inglourious Bastards came out. He's just like, because it takes liberty with history, and he's like, well, my characters don't know what happened, like they don't know that they're in a movie. And I love that approach, like your character, because that leads to more authentic actions from your characters when they don't know that they're setting something up, like so I always love that. But the other thing that I was going to mention about connection between Stephen King and Bag of Bones and this is not actually from Paul Sheldon, but from Annie Wilkes, which is that Mike Noonan from Bag of Bones, the place where he goes to write is called Sarah Laughs. Stephen King's is called Kara Laughs.
Mm-hmm.
And Annie Wilkes goes to
The
Annie's laughing place. And so I was like, oh wow, so that maybe these are both versions of Stephen King, which maybe he would, I don't know if he's ever addressed it, but maybe he would talk about some of his more obsessive thoughts. And not only that, but there literally is a serial killer living in his brain who has killed thousands of characters over the years. I didn't think about this until this moment, but they could both, like, that house that they were in could just be Stephen King's head. And that's a very interesting thought.
It reminds me of like The Dark Half and Secret Window, all of his writing characters like all coming together and being
that would be a great book. He should write that book. That would be a circle jerk. That would just be him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I found those connections. The other connection is that this firmly takes place in the Shining universe, which takes place in the It universe, which takes place in the Dark Tower universe.
Exactly.
So that's why I was saying, like before, like this maybe should have been a part of that read, just because it is connected. Of course, nothing within it actually just direct reference. So it's fine that I left it out, but it does connect through all of that. So and we'll talk about this when we get to The Shining, whenever we do The Shining. But the fact that Dick Hallorann is mentioned in it, but that's Dick Hallorann is mentioned in it, and they reference The Shining movie in Dark Tower, and in Doctor Sleep, Dan says there are other worlds than these. Those things are connections.
And Charlie the Choo Choo.
And Charlie Choo Choo, yes, that's right. Charlie Choo Choo is in there.
Anybody hasn't read The Dark Tower and just wanted to see misery being talked about, I'm sorry. It's hard. It's hard not to talk about all the connections.
There's going to be a lot of talk about Dark Tower throughout this series. If you haven't read it, maybe this will inspire you to go read The Dark Tower. And so those things like put it in, and the fact that Stephen King said all these things are in that universe, put it in there in that universe, but like there's not a specific direct reference like that actually puts these characters there, but at least it does tie it into that. Let's talk about the movie, the adaptation, real quick, because I saw this back when it came out. Like I said, Stephen King stuff was wholly in my home, so it was so I saw this back then, even though I was a child. But I remember like I think most people remember seeing the hobbling scene for the first time.
People that never watched the movie know the hobbling scene. So.
Right, exactly. It's a cultural thing. Like you don't have to know what it is to have seen it, or to know what it is, or have seen it to know what it is. So when I and I'd always heard that he, and I don't think I have to say spoilers because we're going to talk about the spoilers for both things, but spoilers. I'd always heard and I had known that the hobbling in the book was that she cut his leg off. But and I always thought, I wonder, that sounds worse, but is it worse? I can tell you with 100% certainty, nothing she did to him in the book was worse than that hobbling scene in the movie. I don't want to lose my leg in the long term. I think losing, having your leg or foot cut off is worse. But in terms of horror imagery, watching his ankle or his foot go the wrong direction when she hits it with that sledgehammer, is burned into my brain forever.
And I think the thing about the film is that I think if they did go with like the cutting off of, I mean, I say the foot, but it's a little bit above the ankle, I think. If they'd gone with that, they probably would have cut away when she actually does it. They don't cut away from her breaking the ankles with the sledgehammer. Just see that like rubbery flop, and it's just like, oh.
Yeah. Well, and in the movie, she hobbles both legs.
Right.
But they do cut away for the second one. But you see that first one in all its glory, and it's just awful. It's just one of the worst things I've ever seen.
I do think for me the most horrifying imagery, and it's not in the movie, it's in the book, and I kind of wish they'd done it, but at the same time it wasn't the right tone for what the tone of the movie ended up being, is the birthday cake with the thumb that she had cut off in the middle, that she threatens to make him eat his own thumb if he doesn't blow out the candles and eat the birthday cake.
Yeah.
That is the most horrifying thing.
It's funny because as I was reading it this time, I thought I had drifted off again. Like my mind had wandered because he mentioned not having a thumb on one of his hands. And I was like, did I miss the part where she cuts his thumb off? But they actually go back and describe that. So I was very confused for a little bit. And then when they went back and described it, oh, okay, that makes sense. I will say that that represents something that kind of bugs me about Stephen King's writing. And again, anybody who's watching it, I love reading Stephen King. He does like to over foreshadow certain things, and I don't even know if that's the right term. He likes to tell me that something's happened before I actually get to it happening. And the worst example is actually in my favorite Stephen King book, The Stand. And I'm not going to go too spoilery on this, but there's a point where two people are parting from each other, and the text is something like, and that's the last time they ever saw each other. And then we go on to find out what happens to the people who die. And I was just like, okay, luckily I know this, so it wasn't like a huge shock to me or anything like that. Like, I've read The Stand several times. I've seen the miniseries from the 90s way more. It's not necessarily that it like ruined a thing for me, but like when it's telling the story about how he lost his thumb, I know he's going to lose his thumb the whole time. Like, so it might have been more affecting to me if I had not known that before it happened. But yeah, that is I completely agree. That is that is both funny and horrifying, that scene with the thumb birthday candle. Let's talk about the casting in the movie, because I think it is incredible. My understanding was that, and I don't know that this was, I think I may have read someone fan casting this, but it might have been the case that Richard Dreyfuss was going to play Paul at one point, which would make sense because
I can see that.
Just because he's worked with Rob Reiner and stuff like that. In Stand By Me, he does he is the older character, or the older narrator. He's the narrator. But Kathy Bates, this was like, she was unknown or relatively unknown. This is the first thing I ever saw her in.
Same, or at least that I registered her in. And
I've seen her in a lot of stuff. I love Kathy Bates. Like, I think she's just great. And you think with time that maybe this this performance might diminish a little, but for me, it does not at all. Like, I am just like still like the best performance she's ever given, and the only like. I'm not a person who feels like you can't recast something or thinks you have to stop or something like that. You can't do more adaptations, that kind of thing. But it's such a hard.
It is.
Like it's like Heath. I mean, it's even worse than this. But it's like Heath Ledger with the Joker. Like there comes a point where like, yeah, you can keep doing it, but you're never not going to be compared to
right.
to this performance.
So I know that we agreed not to like watch Castle Rock for this.
Right.
But I will say the second season of Castle Rock is mainly focused on a much younger Annie Wilkes, in which she has a daughter, which is just, different.
And it's
but
Lizzie
kind of
Kaplan, right?
Yes. And Lizzie Kaplan, she does a good job. I mean, she does what she can. She's playing a younger version. If I'd never seen Misery and was unfamiliar with everything, I'd probably think she was great. Because I really do like Lizzie Kaplan a lot. But yeah, it's just hard to like ever top that or even come close to being in the same category. Because at times she's sympathetic.
Right.
And that's tough to do when you're that crazy.
Right.
And she's even crazier in the book than the movie.
She's much crazier in the book than in the movie. But this is actually where, for me, the movie hits a little bit better for me. And that is in that performance, because yes, she's crazier and she's scarier in the book because you never know exactly what's going to go on. But Kathy Bates plays her so sympathetically and then switches so fast into that like crazy that it actually endears you to the character at times, which I think the book tries to do a little bit, but does not do it nearly as effectively as it's done in the movie, in my opinion. I will also say, sorry, go ahead. I was about
That's
to
okay. I was just going to say, I think that in the case of the book, it's harder for her to be sympathetic because she does such horrific things. It's a little bit easier the movie where, she is crazy and, she could probably be capable of horrific things, but we don't really see a lot of them. So I think it is slightly easier for her to be sympathetic in the movie in that way.
Right. I agree. And that's also something I think that that the book or the movie does really well, because while it's not okay, so on the subject of adaptations, there are different schools of thought. People will tell you different things. As I mentioned before, I'm a film person, so I am not one of those people who are automatically the book is always better. A lot of times the book is better, but I think sometimes a movie can elevate what's there. When it comes to adaptations, I think a lot of people consider, like, if it's not 100% faithful, like just you hit every note, you hit every scene, everything like that, it's not a good adaptation. I think that this is a really good adaptation that takes some liberties that are necessary to make it a really good movie also.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
No, that's okay. Continue. I was just going to jump on your point. You can finish it first.
But so, and there's several things that I think do this very well. Number one, the movie humanizes Paul in a way that the book doesn't at all. And which is interesting, because you would think that we spend so much time with Paul in the book that we might feel something for him other than God, stop hurting this man.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, the book is entirely his point of view. I can't remember anything that we get in the book that's not from him.
Yeah, I think it's basically all him.
Because we don't ever know anything that's happening if he's not there to witness it.
I think that's right. I thought there might have been, but I don't think so. Now that you mentioned, I think it is all his point of view. So with a book that spends that much time with him, you might, but he's kind of a dirtbag, and it's not just that. It's that, like, the cruelty he feels for her before he knows who she is, makes him just not a likable character.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, you still want him to get away. Like, it's not like it's like, good, do this to him. You still want him to get away. But the movie humanizes him in a way that the book doesn't, by not really making him unlikable. Like, you kind of, and a lot of that is James Caan's performance, like, is really good. And you believe what he's saying, whether you can't see in his brain, but you believe a lot of what he's saying. But like, starting it out with him, like, with his agent or whatever, the Lauren Bacall character, all that stuff, getting to know him, not hearing all the disgusting things that he's thinking in his brain.
Exactly. It helps so we don't hear his thoughts.
Helps with feeling a bit more empathy for the character, outside of, like I said, dear Lord, stop hurting this man. Like, that's the other thing that I think that does really well is that when she kills the cop in the book, I don't want her to kill a person, but I also don't know this person. Like, and I don't really feel much. They did such a good job.
I love what
making
they did
me love that character, that when he died, I actually was, and I knew he was going to, like, when he died, I was crestfallen. Like, I was like, oh God, no. And a lot of this is down to, it was written by, the screenplay was written by William Goldman, who wrote the book and the screenplay Princess Bride. He's written a lot of really great screenplays. He was accused of writing Good Will Hunting, which is a movie we both love, because no one could believe that Matt and Ben wrote such a good screenplay. I think that a lot of it just comes down to that. But sorry, I've talked so much. I would like to hear your...
That's okay. I'm trying to remember now. What was the point I was going to jump on? Oh, the adaptation point. So I actually, historically in my life, have been just as big of a reader as I have been a film and television watcher, especially when I was younger. Like, I just love stories. I don't really care the medium I get them in. But I think because I kind of love them all equally, I've always been able to see them as their own things. Like, I can love this book for what this book is, and I can love this movie, even if it's not anywhere near the same as the book, but I can love it for what it is. Sometimes it would be nice to have really close adaptations. I kind of want to see what I'm envisioning. But I also think, like, I can separate them, and they don't need to be, almost everything needs to have some liberties taken to make a book into a good movie. There's very few books that come ready for screenplays. Like, it's just not how it works. So I think with the liberties they took in this case were very small. And in the most part, like you said, I was going to talk about the cop, because I thought getting out of Paul's viewpoint and getting to see the cop with his wife, and granted, the cops in the movie, we got the one young cop who she runs over with the lawnmower, and then the older cops come later. But I love that. I loved him. I loved the little side story of them, and I kept going, oh God, I hate that he's gonna die, like, as but yeah, no, I thought that was great, and it was a lot more effective in terms of being a simple kill, but a more impactful one, because even though it didn't have the horror of the one in the book, we cared that he was dying.
Right. To your point on adaptations, I actually am the same. I've always been a reader and a film person. I'm more of a film person, so that's why I mentioned it that way. But when I talk about adaptations, also, I just need to mention that there are great movies that are bad adaptations of Stephen King novels. We're going to talk about one. It's a big one. It's a really great movie.
It's one of my favorite books and movies, and
but
they're nothing.
It's just a bad adaptation, but it's a great movie, and that's okay. And that's kind of the movie has a job to do, and the job is not to be the book. it is to
Exactly.
be a good movie.
Exactly. Yes. That's first and foremost, it's to be a good movie.
And if you can be a good movie and be faithful to the source material, great. Hopefully you've kept some of the themes in it, and that's The Shining. We'll just put it out there. Shining's a bad adaptation, and because a lot of the themes are lost in it, that's what makes it a bad adaptation. It's a great movie. This, I think, has all the stuff in it and condenses it well enough that it's a good movie, and it faithfully reflects what the book is. And
right.
Did you have leading off of that, we can get into our next section, which is to kind of rate these. But did you have anything else to say about the book or movie before we move into that?
Not really. The only other thing I wanted to mention, and it happens in both of them, is that one thing I found really compelling is her scrapbook and hearing about all her past deeds. I wish that the Castle Rock show had been more focused on the stuff that happens in that scrapbook, which it wasn't at all. I think that would have been a lot of fun. But the Castle Rock show is stuff that happens in Castle Rock, and they put her there. She doesn't belong there.
That makes sense.
So, yeah.
And for our viewing audience here, while this is going to be watching adaptations, reading books and watching adaptations, that's what the show's going to be. We're also going to cover things that are not adaptations, but are Stephen King things, like the stuff that he has written that weren't written works first, that became like Storm of the Century and stuff like that. We're going to cover that kind of stuff. We're also going to cover things like Castle Rock, which is kind of an adaptation of a bunch of stuff. But we're gonna separate that. We're not gonna make that part of any of these things. We're just gonna separate them off onto their own thing. So, well, what we're gonna do now is do the tier ranking. So what we're gonna do here is we're going to we had talked about just like ranking them as we go and kind of seeing where that lands. But I think we kind of agreed here that that maybe doing them as tier lists and then like ranking them within each tier. And we kind of probably need to talk about this, that I think that like the very top tier, the S tier, or we'll find out what it's called here. We should limit how many we can put there. And then once we get to that limit, we have to kind of rank them and then move things out. Like if we, so I don't know what that number is. We'll figure that out for next time. But right now it's just going to be one, whatever thing wherever we put it. But first let's do a tier ranking of the novel. So let me.
Yeah, I need the graphic.
Yeah.
I don't remember your genius categories. I just remember
and just so we're all aware. Oh, hold on. Where are we? Hold on. I want us to be on the screen with this. There we go. Okay. So, and again, I'm sorry for anybody who's never read Dark Tower, but there's a lot of Dark Tower references in here.
Dark Tower references.
So the S tier is S for shines. It shines. That's going to be our S tier. Our A tier is aims with the eye, shoots with the mind, kills with the heart. The B tier, this is the only one that doesn't start with the letter, but the letter is in there. Guardian of the Beam is our B tier. C tier is Cully. D tier is Devil Grass. E tier is Everything's Ruined. And then, just that bottom tier. And I don't know how many of his stories and novels are going to make it down here. I can think of one that I would definitely put down here.
I was just thinking of one.
But Forgotten the Face of Its Father. The shameful, very low place of Forgotten the Face of Its Father. But we're going to do Misery, the book here. And let me just start with you. Where would you put Misery?
So I'm going to do this based on my enjoyment, not quality necessarily. And granted, sometimes those things do go together and sometimes they don't. I would say, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, I just want to, just a disclaimer. I'm sure everyone watching this is mature enough to understand this, but I know some people who aren't. So I just want to just put this blanket out there. We are not uh, giving a definitive rating on this book. It does not affect how you feel about this book or movie. It is not anything but our ranking. And what we're going to do here is, if we are different on this, we're going to have to discuss it until we figure something out where we're going to put it. But we are just putting this on a tier, and going forward, it is our opinion. If you would put it higher or lower, awesome. Tell me in the comments where you would put it. That's the important thing. But anyway, go on. Sorry.
So the book, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, we're talking about the book here, yeah.
I think I would put it in Cully.
Oh, okay.
Very middle for me. And I'm also thinking of the other Stephen King books that I like and trying to,
Yeah.
But I think I'd put it right in the middle. Like,
interesting. See,
I think the quality is higher than that. But in terms of revisiting it, like, I mean, I haven't revisited it in like over 20 years, and I'm okay with that. So
interesting. I went into this because of my experience. I went into this thinking, oh God, I'm going to put it in Cully and everybody's going to yell at me. But now that I read it, like when I first, because my first experience wasn't good, but now that I finished it and read it all the way through, I am higher than that. I was going to put it
in Beam because the quality is higher than Cully.
Well, because that's actually what I was about to say, because I was going to put it in Aims with the Eye, Shoots with the Mind, Kills with the Heart. And since we don't agree, the average there is going to be Guardian of the Beam. And I think that is reasonable.
Yeah, I will say, I do think that it is, as quality, it is a much higher ranking than Cully. But as far as just like personal, how much do I like this book? It would probably be Cully.
All right. So that puts us in that, puts that there. And I know because I'm about to go over some Stephen King fan stuff, I know this is probably going to be much lower than some people wanted it to be.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people think it should be, and it shines because it is one of his more revered works, generally speaking.
And if that's the case, you're right. You're right. It should be there. Just like we're right where we put it. So, but if you have strong thoughts about it, please tell us in the comments. But that's going to bring us to the next tier, which is, or the next tier ranking, which is going to be the adaptations, which has the same tier ranking, but this time we're talking about the movie. And as I said before, the movie actually works better for me than the book. So for me, I would actually put it in A tier. Aims with the Eye, Shoots with the Mind, Kills with the Heart. How do you feel?
So are we basing this just the movie alone, or the movie in like are we taking how well it's adapted into account, is my question here.
That is the question, isn't it? Like that's kind of between you and your chewed, Okay. So however you feel about that is kind of where it goes. For me, when I'm deciding these things, I'm going to take account into how good of a movie it is and how good of an adaptation it is. Okay. And I think it's both are A tier for me, which is why it goes there for me.
So I think if I'm going to take into account how good of an adaptation it is, I probably agree with A tier, because I think quality-wise it's A tier and it's an A tier adaptation. But for me, with enjoyability and rewatchability and just my love of King movies, it would be lower. But I was going to say, even before you said your rating, that I thought that the quality and the adaptation part was both A tier.
Excellent. Well, then there we go. And with that, we have made a strong statement about about the movie versus the book, which is not always the
Yeah, it's
case.
totally not going to be the norm.
But as I mentioned before, I did go to I went to Reddit, to the Stephen King Reddit, and there's a lot of good conversations that go on in there, and so I decided, hey, I'm going to ask them their thoughts, and this is what I said. I told them, that we're about to start this show, and that I wanted to get other King fans' opinions on these things as we go along. I'll probably do this every single time, and so I if this works out, if we don't hate it or something, but if they don't start yelling at us, but I asked them, what are your thoughts? I told them they could answer one or all of these questions, or they could just answer with no guidance. And I asked thoughts on the book Misery, thoughts on the movie Misery. Do you prefer the book or movie? Is there anything you think is done better in the book or in the movie? And thoughts on casting of Annie and Paul. Those are the kind of guidelines I put, but I just gave it to where anybody could say anything. So these are some of the responses I got, and I got some really cool responses from people. Boo Boo Cat says, Misery is one of my favorite adaptations. Kathy Bates is amazing. Perfection. It's been a few years since I've read the book. I've read it numerous times. I really like it, but there's the part where Paul is writing the Misery book and there's some nonsense about giant bees or something. I did not care for that.
The killer bees. That part's pretty stupid.
Yeah. For these reasons, I probably like the movie a bit more, which I liked. And this was the first person who came in. So I was like, okay, people who are going to be on our wavelength, or my wavelength at the time, now our wavelength. That's not the case going forward. I will just warn you. Outrageous. Oh, cover your kids' ears. Outrageous Vagina says, I had watched the movie many times before reading the book, so I thought the book was kind of fucked up before reading it. Then I read the book. Yeah, the movie went pretty much from R to PG-13 after that compared to the book. I prefer the book, but the movie is great. And it's a great adaptation. Casting is just perfection.
I do want to say one thing about the movie versus the book is I do think the movie probably on purpose took out what would make it more of a horror movie and some more horrific elements and leaned more into like the suspense drama side of it.
Psychological part, yeah.
Right, which is not a criticism of the movie. It was just an observation. So depending if you like more of the horror or more of the,
No, I agree. And you're trying to fit the whole book into, an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever. Right. Picking and choosing what you're going to kind of show. And I think that I think they did a really great job on that. Blod's Brother 7 says, I just read the book last month and watched the movie again afterwards. The movie does a good job of delivering the narrative of King's book, but the book is way more intense. Annie is the most psychologically evil human character outside of maybe Patrick Hockstetter in the It novels. Misery is a brutal book and an awesome ride.
Yes,
I agree with that. That she is most evil, like, which was easy to do. Just making her a maternity nurse and then having her do what she does, like that just makes her
right.
Like,
one thing I do wish we got more of in the movie, because I completely did not realize this as a kid and never got it from the movie, was that when I was listening to this time, I was like, oh, Annie's so bipolar. And I had I'd never thought that before. And then watching the movie, I'm like, yeah, it doesn't really convey it like it does in the book. We don't really see the depressive state. We see a glimpse of it, but not at the extremes. And that is one of the few things I do really wish we got a bit more of, to see a bit more of that.
Yeah.
She's not just some crazy lady.
Yes, exactly. Well, and because in the book you get more of, you get like Paul or the narrator kind of waxing about the difference between someone who's sad and someone who's having a psychotic episode and that kind of thing. So you get all of that in there, and while even if you aren't seeing her, you're kind of because what the movie did was basically what the book does, which is that she comes in and she has a different attitude than last time. You know, she's different persona than last time. But you get that little part in between where Paul's thinking about it and considering what she is. So,
well,
yeah, I agree.
When he leaves the room, when she's gone for what's like days, I think in the book versus like, you know, hours, and he sees what she's been eating and the mess and like food all over like the furniture, like it just really illustrates like this depressive hole that she has been in, and it's been for longer than a day. Like he talks about her coming in with stains and stuff for a little bit. So I do think that yeah, and then obviously she gets manic and, you know, kills people. But I do think that it's definitely a lot clearer in the book to me.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. All right. So the Bright Lights Fright says the book is one of my favorites, but it is incredibly dark and disturbing, even compared to the film adaptation. The film is quite good. Kathy Bates and James Caan couldn't really be beat for the casting. I like the book more by far. It just felt so incredible with all the details that the film skipped. And I absolutely love the callbacks that Stephen put in for the Shining connection, which we did discuss. And yeah, I think that's often a criticism for adaptations is the amount of detail, and you just, again, we kind of went over this several times, which is that the book's job is not, or the movie's job is to make a movie, not fill in every gap with the book. So as long as it does that effectively, it's doing its job. Which is not what this person is saying. Now, I'm not saying that this person is saying that the movie failed in that, but yeah, it can. There is, especially when it comes to Annie, there's a lot of details in there that you really get from the book. Morrow Dad says Misery is probably the best adaptation of a King book I've ever seen. The book was, of course, better and had more going on in it, but they had to cut down to a reasonable time for the movie. The casting was fantastic, and they overall did a great job with the movie. I can't think of anything I would have changed. Which we're starting with a strong adaptation. If this person is correct, that is the best adaptation of a King book. I think it is. That's kind of what we're going to do here on this journey, is to find out. I think that it is definitely up there in terms of
quality of adaptation.
Right.
Well, that's what got it in the A tier for me, was how well it was adapted. Because I don't know that I necessarily like the movie better. I haven't really given it a lot of thought, but just talking about it now, I kind of feel like there are elements of the book that make the book better for me. But I do think it's an extremely well done adaptation. If it's at the best, I'm not sure, but it is definitely a contender for, King stuff is historically badly adapted.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're gonna find out, I guess, is are there better adaptations? I think that Rob Reiner, who sadly we lost recently, is really good at making movies that are really good adaptations. Did the same thing with Princess Bride, and Stand By Me, and right, he did Stand By Me, right?
Yes. I think so.
Yeah, so he's really good at making really good adaptations. So I will say that
Frank Darabont and Mike Flanagan would also have some movies in the running for best adaptations.
For sure. So. There are several, but there's this last one I wanted to read. It is and if I didn't read yours, I'm sorry. It's just a time issue, not because everybody who commented had really great things to say.
I'm so excited about this, that you're going to have this interaction that we can talk about.
I'm going to do this for each one, for each episode, I think. And then, so if you have things to say, please go in there. I will try to get to as many of them as I can. Just this last one, I really enjoyed, and it's very long. So I'm going to kind of skip to this one. And Generally, I might just skip this one, but there's a lot of it that I really connected to. So I'm going to read this guy. It's from Ultra Flying Turtle. And they said, I saw this movie in the theater when it came out in 1990 and read the book afterward. I remember there was a good amount of hype for Misery because it was going to be directed by Rob Reiner. Reiner was already super popular because of Stand By Me and The Princess Bride, both of which I just mentioned. Especially among my friends and I. We loved Rob Reiner. He was also one of the first directors to successfully adapt a Stephen King story while staying fairly true to the origin story, as the film was adapted from the body novella. Most of the adaptations of the King changed a lot of stuff. Several years earlier, my friends and I had seen Stand By Me, and at the time, we weren't that much older than the kids in the film, and we could really relate to the characters. I know it might sound sacrilegious to say, but we loved Stand By Me more than The Goonies, which came out a year earlier in 1985. Let me just cut in to say, I do understand that. Like, I love The Goonies, but I loved Stand By Me. Like, and it just probably was the more grown up nature of it. But I was a big fan of Stand By, which also focused on a group of little kids on an adventure. Stand By Me just felt more powerful, with a hint of danger and suspense because of the kids finding a dead body. I don't know why, but the film really resonated with me and even got a little teary-eyed near the end, which didn't happen often for me at that age, since I was still just a kid. I remember sitting in the movie theater, peeking at my friends to see if I was the only one. Spoiler, I wasn't the only one. Because of Rob Reiner's Stand By Me film was so good, it made me and many of my friends and classmates start reading Stephen King. I asked my parents to take me to the bookstore, and I bought different seasons, which contained the body novella. I also Skeleton Key so I could read the Mist novella. That's basically how I became a huge, massive King fan, because of Rob Reiner's films. I started reading Stephen King book one after another. By the time Misery was about to come out 4 years later, my close friends and I were now edgier, older teenagers who liked horror movies. While watching other films, we started to see the trailers for Misery, and because Rob Reiner's name was attached, we were super excited. He had no idea Reiner was making another King film, so we made it a point to see the film during the opening weekend. I still remember the reaction from the audience during the certain scenes in the movie. Those scenes are burned into my brain all these years. I assume the hobbling scene is probably the major one that they're talking about. If social media was around back then, those scenes would have gone viral, or at least one scene in particular. It was also the first time I had seen Kathy Bates. She really became popular after this movie. I don't know if she was in a lot of stuff before this, but this film definitely jump-started her career. I think since she was still relatively unknown at the time, it made her role as a crazed fan even more effective. Because opposite her was James Caan, who was super famous, especially because of his roles in the Godfather films. Their actual status as actors, one mega famous, the other one not at all, really heightened the everyday fan versus celebrity dynamic of the film and made their in-film relationship more believable. I really liked Misery, but for some reason, even though I had read a lot of King by then, I had avoided reading the original novel. I didn't think a book about a romance writer would be appealing to me as a teenage boy. After watching the movie, I bought the novel anyway and realized I was wrong. While I still thought The Stand was my all-time favorite King novel, it's my favorite as well. Too. I still really liked Misery. It's the opposite. It was way better than expected. I also especially liked all the various meta aspects. The mass paperback version at the time had a double cover. So when you opened the book, you saw another book cover inside. But it was a cheesy looking romance cover with a beautiful woman holding onto a dashing, muscular version of Stephen King. That made me laugh, and it really set the tone for the novel. A mix of horror and some irony and self-referential humor. You could tell that King had a blast writing the fictional text of the romance book in the novel, as even I liked reading those parts. You also knew that King was kind of writing his own fandom, poking fun at his own fears of being stalked. I think the book came out in 1987 when King was still at the peak of his powers and popularity, right before he went into rehab. So yeah, all those meta aspects of how the book was published with double covers, to King himself being super popular author with a massive and often obsessive fan base, and the book within the book, the romance book passages inside the Misery novel made the novel version of Misery a lot more entertaining for me. Even though I still really liked the movie, I thought it was a great adaptation and still one of the better Stephen King films. The movie just couldn't replicate all those textual and formatting aspects of the book, as well as the extra details you get from reading a novel rather than watching a 2-hour movie. So yeah, those are my overly verbose 2 cents about the film and the book. Thanks to all who read all of this. Anyway, I wanted to read that whole thing because, number one, they said a lot of things that I was also thinking. But also, like, I love a story where something is a gateway to something else, artistic or something, a love of something else. I love film, so anytime film can be a gateway for a passion for someone, is always really touches me. So I really enjoyed that person's thoughts on this book. What do you think about them or any of the other?
No, I think that the comments were great. I think that last one kind of summed up a lot of the things that we said. Yeah. So I agree with it. So it's right. Yeah. But no, I love that you're getting this interaction. Now I kind of want to go read them. I'm not on Reddit usually at all, and I don't really know how to navigate it, to be honest, because I'm not on it. But this makes me want to get on it now, and I want to like read this stuff. But yeah, I think this is going to be like a fun aspect to have to the show, so that even if we don't get like comments on the videos and stuff, we can still get feedback.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to be a really cool aspect of it. And for everybody watching who might comment on the Reddit thing, on episodes where there wasn't an extremely long post that I really wanted to read, I'll definitely get to more of your stuff. I just noticed this one, and I'm not going to read their whole comment, but seeing that penguin like the film, thought it hold up. They just rewatched it in snowy season.
It is a good snowy season book. I'm expecting a blizzard, so it was an apt time for me to just watch it.
Oh yeah, heck yeah. But their last sentence here was, "For what it's worth, while reading, I was picturing Richard Dreyfuss and Don't Laugh, Roseanne Barr." That's not laugh worthy. I think that's great. I think it's great casting. Like, of course, she's not going to beat Kathy Bates, but 1980s Roseanne Barr, like that would be pretty good. That was early in her fame. She'd recently had HBO special. I thought Conn and Bates were excellent. So anyway, so that is Misery. And now we're going to talk about the future for the show, which is that we're going to be back in, we don't know exactly how much time, maybe a couple weeks at least. We're going to do this at least once a month. We're going to try to do things that only have one adaptation or that are shorter stories and stuff like that. We're going to try to maybe do a couple a month, but at least once a month. But next month, March, is International Women's Day. Is that correct?
Yeah,
that's not day. I said month, and then I said day. So that can't be right.
It's women's awareness? No, it's not an awareness. It's just Women's Month. Okay,
international, Women's Month is. So we decided to do one that was that focused on a woman and not a woman who was psychological crisis throughout the whole thing, which I guess that's not
actually she kind of is. But
she is, but who is not different. Psychotic. Correct. That's the important thing.
Strong female character on the other side of things.
Yes, but anyway, we are going to read Gerald's Game and then watch the Mike Flanagan directed adaptation. For the first couple, we're going to try to do things that only have one adaptation, just so everybody's aware for the first few, just so we can kind of get our bearings and get onto that. But here within the next couple months, we're going to start to do maybe some that have a lot of adaptations or that are very, very long books that have
television
maybe
shows,
series based on them and stuff like that. But yeah, for now, we're going to try to keep it relatively contained in terms of what we're going to be talking about for now. But talk to us in the comments. What do you think of Misery? What do you think of the book? What do you think of the movie? Have you read the book and not seen the movie, and now you want to go see the movie? Have you seen the movie and had never read the book? And now talk to us. Tell us what you think about. For Screen King, I'm Matt.
And I'm Stacy.
Long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.